What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Let's Talk MMA podcast, and hope you guys have an amazing one. What'd you guys think of that Misfits card, man? I think it was pretty good. Tony's fight eclipsed that event. The fight gathered about 2 million views on YouTube, although it was the co-main, and seeing the joy in Tony's face melts the heart, man. I don't think I've ever been happier to see a fighter win than him that day, just because of how much it meant to him and how unfamiliar it was becoming to see Tony win a fight. There's like a short going around of Tony just screaming from the depths of his soul, expelling all that frustration and anguish that he's been suffering with for the past 6 years. Finally getting a win. Just clawed himself out of that mental rut, dispelling that shadow of defeat so now he can rejoice in glorious victory. And it's pretty cool, man. I'm so happy for Tony because he needed that win. I was watching some of his interviews after, and he talked about it like he could finally feel happiness about his performance after so many years. He definitely needed that win, not only for his status or the legend that he is, but I think mostly for his psyche. You know, going from a fighter who was, at the time, on the longest lightweight streak in history to accumulating the longest losing streak in history. Sudden polarizing runs like that can destroy a fighter's mental. And even though it's Saul Poppy, even though it's in another sport, just tasting victory again for a fighter who's so familiar with it but lost that feeling after 6 years of defeat matters for his confidence, matters for his psyche. It might carry him to continue his career further, and I don't know if he should, honestly. I think the hype right now is great. Like, we can see Tony Ferguson fight other influencer boxers, which would be a lot better than real boxers. Real boxers would tear Tony Ferguson apart. I hope he does retire. If not now, then soon enough. But we'll see. And it's so hard not to root for him to continue, but logically, I think this is a perfect win for him to retire with. And we got to thank that referee as well, because he did stop the fight pretty early. He must be a Tony Ferguson fan just like all of us. We would have done the same thing. We see Tony winning, we're stopping the fight for him. But he did actually look very good out there. Luke Rockhold should not have been in that ring. I don't know why he decided to box. The guy's taking so much brain damage, he should just stick to grappling or something. That was a disastrous knockout, bro. And Dern continues to show how good of a striker he is. I mean, this guy's pretty much in his prime right now. He has some great fights against Robert Whittaker, Wonderboy. Stylistically, he could have done well against someone like Israel Adesanya as well. He performs so well against technical strikers. But the Dillon Danis fight, so this has been boggling my mind. The guy's fighting a boxer in an MMA match, right? Of course, this is going to favor Dillon Danis. I mean, he rarely is ever in a competition where he can use his grappling. I mean, he tried in boxing against Logan Paul, which is insane, and it didn't work, which is also insane. The guy literally surprise attacked him with a double leg and didn't get it. He tried to get him in a guillotine. Didn't work. The guy was getting choked up by security guards and stuff. Like, Dillon Danis' grappling has been taking so many L's. But the guy is world class. He's actually a prominent grappler. And in his first MMA fight, ever since Bellator was fully still around, 2019, dude, was his last MMA fight. This boxer, Warren Spencer, decided to shoot a takedown on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ace and got submitted immediately for it. And the strangest thing about that was that Spencer was downplaying grappling and how no one cares about grappling, and that the only way Danis would beat him would be through his grappling, and that's it. He even wanted to monetize him so he doesn't grapple, right? Keep the fight standing. Honestly, I think this showed that he was deathly afraid of Danis' grappling, but he was the one that grappled first. He shot the first takedown as a boxer. Now, I think he might have done that because he got stunned from the very first shot of Dillon Danis. Danis hit him with a stiff jab that momentarily stunned Spencer. Then Spencer landed a jab, Danis laughed it off, and then Spencer, out of nerves or whatever it was, shot a double leg. I don't know if this guy's ever shot a double leg in his entire life, but definitely the wrong guy to shoot on. Easiest win of Dillon Danis' life, bro. He's never going to get an easier fight than that. And they might do a fight between him and Eddie Hall. KSI shook on it. He told Eddie Hall he's down to make the fight. Dillon Danis said he'll take the fight. That's going to be interesting. I don't know if Danis can win that. He's going to shoot at the legs, and he's going to try to pull guard and sweep him with leg locks and stuff to get him to the ground. Eddie Hall is a monster of a man. He might smush Dillon Danis, honestly. And Danis is not a small guy. He probably walks around like, I would guess around like 200 pounds or 210 pounds, somewhere around there. He weighed in the 190s against Spencer, so we'll see. Danis had a condition for the fight that Eddie Hall would have to weigh under 300 pounds. That's such a crazy stipulation. Like, hey, you can't be 300 pounds. I love watching Eddie Hall fight. It's just like a huge spectacle with one of the strongest men in the world. I think he beats Dillon Danis, to be honest. But I wouldn't be surprised if Danis finds a way to pull it off. Again, high-level BJJ. That fight is what BJJ is supposed to reflect. Skills defeats size. We're going to see if it actually works with one of the strongest and biggest men in the world. versus one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners in the world. Dillon Danis is holding BJJ's reputation in his hands. The entire BJJ community is being represented by this guy. And I know a lot of them are very upset at that, but it is what it is. And it's such a good year for the Resurgence. We had Alexander Volkanovski reclaiming his belt. Tony Ferguson back in the winning column. Same with Kamaru Usman, Dominick Reyes on a win streak. What a year for perseverance, man. And who's to say Dominick Reyes doesn't knock out Carl Zolberg, gets that title shot against Magomed Ankalaev? That would be interesting. Imagine Reyes finally reached that expected potential that everybody set for him by defeating Magomed Ankalaev. Reyes becoming the light heavyweight champion would be something straight out of a movie. From an undefeated title challenger, defeating the greatest of all time, but controversially, getting robbed on the scorecards. Proceeds to a 4-loss streak, then rebounds his mental for the great resurgence, defeating 3 contenders in a row, then beats the champion, winning the title. Honestly, they can make a movie out of Dominick Reyes' journey if he succeeds in that manner. And that would be really cool. Dude, it would be insane if he KO'd Olberg. That card's in a few weeks, and it's an interesting card. It has 16 total fights, making it the longest card in UFC history. It says that the prelims start at 7, but that would mean there's going to be way less ads between fights, and honestly, I prefer it. Because honestly, it's the ads that really drag this whole thing out and kills the immersion. One of the best experiences of watching a combat sports card is when one fight instantly cycles into the next. Like there's no break in between them. That sort of flow is just blissful, man. It's amazing. You know who had a card like that? Dan Hooker's backyard fights. Once one fight was over, the next one instantly began. If that's the way this card is formulated, I'm all in. That's going to be amazing. I just hope they don't switch the prelim timing of it. And in other news, Renato Moicano says that he heard the next title fight at lightweight will be Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. And honestly, it looks like they might maneuver to that direction. At this point, I just want Ilia to fight somebody. Hopefully he fights again this year. And if it's against Justin Gaethje, you know what? I just want to see him fight anybody. I'm fine with it at this point. I think Ilia dusts Gaethje within 2. And although I say that, there is a level of underestimation of Justin Gaethje's skills, specifically in this fight. Yes, he's not as good of a boxer. Yes, he's further down the road in his career, getting very close to that dead end. But he does have a specific sort of skills that can give Ilia a difficult fight, particularly the leg kicks. Ilia's in fact never fought a leg kicker like Justin Gaethje before. Volkanovski is a good leg kicker, but optimizes that very differently. He's not a powerful kicker, but he's a technical kicker that sets up the rest of his striking. Gaethje chops down your base, nerfing the rest of your skill set. And with that forward-leaning heavy stance that Ilia has, it's going to make it very difficult for him to check the kicks, potentially try to get a takedown from there or something like that. I mean, he could reach down at the kick, but it causes further danger of opening up the headshots. So I believe his counter to the leg kicks are going to be digging in with those overhands. That's generally going to be the main answer that he has for those. And it's going to be a unique challenge for Ilia Topuria because of that specific skill alone. The leg kicks changes everything. And I think based off of that, Gaethje does have a distinct chance here compared to some of the other guys that Ilia has fought. With that said, I still think he gets dusted in the first 2 rounds, but it is going to be somewhat interesting on how Ilia handles what is supposed to be the kryptonite to his style. If that's the fight, it is what it is. I just want to see these guys fight already. And with that seemingly on the path, there are rumors that Arman Tsaruykan might be fighting Dan Hooker. And that's another very interesting fight. That leaves Paddy Pimblett without an opponent, and I don't know who else he would fight, maybe Mateusz Gamrot. Max Holloway's still injured, and his return is unknown. If he was available, I think a lot of this will be solved quicker. Won't say quickly, because none of these guys want to fight, but it would give an open opponent for each contender, so we'll see. Maybe it will be Arman versus Paddy. Perhaps Paddy will take the fight. I think we'll have a domino effect once the title fight is set. Whoever fights Ilia Topuria is going to cause a chain effect of all the other contenders to take up another fight. And speaking of taking fights, Merab wants to fight again in November or December. This guy wants to schedule in advance another title defense, even though he has Corey Sandhagen to fight in October. He wants to fight a month or 2 months later against Jan. Merab might be the GOAT. This guy just fought not that long ago. This rapid succession of title defenses that he's accumulating is unheard of. If he in fact fights and defeats Peter Yan in December, let's say, that would be 4 title defenses in a single year, which I believe would be the most in UFC history. And look at the opponents that would consist of. Umar in January, O'Malley in June, Corey in October, Yan in December. There would be no debate as to who's the bantamweight GOAT after that, if there even is a debate already. But I would take that even further. If he accomplishes that goal, of 4 title defenses in a single year against those high-level fighters, you can argue he's pound for pound number 1 or number 2. Although he's never went up a weight class, the streak that he would be on at that moment would be unrivaled. I mean, Ilia has those 3 wins, and those are amazing, but I think Merab would surpass that competition. Overall, that is. Beating Jan to Cejudo, O'Malley twice, Umar, Corey, Jan again. Like, that's a legendary run right there. He would definitely be at least in the conversation with Islam and Ilia. It's crazy, not that long ago, we all thought Merab was going to be a boring fighter, and he's turning out to be must-see TV, and one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't agree with that because of his wrestling style, but I'm enjoying it. Like, to see him wither his opponent away, wilting him under that pressure with non-stop action, and now even submitting someone like Sean O'Malley, has the potential to have 4 title defenses in a single year. The most active champion in the UFC currently, and one of the most active of all time. It's a special champion that doesn't come that often. Truly a special moment in the sport if Merab accomplishes that. Wild, man. I mean, the Jose Aldo fight, Aldo's one of my favorite fighters ever. It was like a thorn on the side to see that. To see him perform the way he is, redeeming himself to such an unexpected extent, it's absolutely a treat to watch. This guy's literally done a 180 for me. And you know what that means for Jan? You better get ready, man. It's time to get into training camp, bro. You have to get into training camp as Merab is about to fight Corey Sandhagen, because he's ready to take you on a month or 2 later. Talk about a BMF champion. Merab is awesome, man. And if he just continues that streak, like, imagine the consistency carries on into the next year and he fights Umar in a rematch, who, by the way, is fighting Mario Bautista. That has been confirmed. So Umar has his next fight. He's not injured anymore. If he beats Bautista, which I expect him to do, it should be a good fight. I honestly think it's more difficult than perhaps the betting odds are going to show, but I think Umar will be the next challenger after Jan. It's crazy that it's all rematches, right? The O'Malley rematch, the Jan rematch, and I think the Umar rematch is going to be the most difficult fight in Merab's career. But we'll see. The Bautista fight is going to be interesting because he's a well-rounded fighter with good cardio. It's going to be a 3-round fight, so perhaps a faster pace, greater action, and I just think Umar is better than him in everything. Straight boxing might go to Bautista, but I think overall Umar is just a better, well-rounded fighter. Better dexterity in his kicks, better timing overall, better wrestling, better grappling, faster scrambles, better positioning. Umar, I think, is just a level above Bautista, and that's going to be part of the UFC 321 card, which has been improved with quality here, except the co-main event. Co-main event's hot garbage. Virna Jandiroba versus Mackenzie Dern for the strawweight title. It's going to be a rematch. We've seen the fight before. Their first fight wasn't that entertaining, but Virna did lose to Dern, so it's going to be interesting, but I think Virna's just on a different level now. Her wrestling's stronger than ever, her striking is improved. Dern is super inconsistent. You just don't know how adequate Dern's performance is going to be on fight night. Sometimes she looks like she deserves to be in the top 5, and sometimes she doesn't. Weili, departing from the strawweight division, created desolate lands over there, man. There's nothing going on in that weight class anymore. And nobody cares about that weight class without Weili in it. To see Virna and Dern as a co-main event to a pay-per-view fighting for the strawweight title is insane optically, because Mackenzie Dern is seen as sort of an industry plant. She's been given so many opportunities to fight these top contenders. She's won some of them, she's lost some of them, but continuously gets these opportunities. This, though, is not a direct industry plant move, because crazy enough, she has the longest win streak in the top 5, other than Virna, who is the best fighter in the weight class now. And no, it's not an impressive win streak. It's only 2 wins. Nobody has more than 2 wins in a row in the top 5. Yan Xiaonan is coming off a loss to Virna Jandiroba. Suarez is coming off a title fight loss. Amanda Lemos is coming off 1 win, but before that loss to Virna Jandiroba. And then you have Dern, who's on a 2-fight win streak. She beat Amanda Ribas and Lupi Godinez, who's ranked right below her. So it is a title fight that makes sense, but it's not the title fight that people care about. It's crazy how the quality of strawweight declined so drastically. For many years, the strawweight division was peak women's MMA. It was the best weight class. You had Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, Jessica Andrade in her prime, and various others. To see the transformation, it's disparaging for the entire women's MMA. No weight class is even that good. Flyweight's okay, but women's MMA is just not what it used to be. And we're getting some good fights, but very few and far between. But speaking of UFC 321, so we have Tom Aspinall versus Tsaruykan as the main event, Jandiroba versus Dern 2, Umar versus Bautista, and then we have Alexander Volkov versus Jailton Almeida. That has to be the next #1 contender fight, right? Whoever wins that is going to fight the winner of Aspinall and Gane, and they're linking up the timelines between those 2 fights. So the winners are going to be fighting each other later. And hopefully when Tom Aspinall beats Tsaruykan, he's going to want to return quickly. So much wasted time with the whole John Jones fiasco. Hopefully he fights Volkov or Almeida early next year. That'd be awesome. Then after that, we have Rakic versus Murzakanov, which is a great fight. The rise of Murzakanov in the light heavyweight division is a promising rise in that weight class because we need fighters like him. That division desperately needs more talent at the top because as of right now, it's the Ankalaev, Alex, and Yuri show. We'll see with Olberg's next performance, and then we'll see what Murzakanov is capable of against someone like Rakic, who is a good fighter, although him sitting on that ranking for so long as a top 5 fighter did bring a lot of scrutiny his way, or the rankings for keeping him in the top 5. But the guy put on a very even fight with Jan Blachowicz before the injury, so we know he's a good fighter. He's not Yuri good or Ankalaev good, but he is, I believe, like the next tier under that. And if Murzakanov can beat him, I think that propels him to fight someone in the top 5. So that should be an interesting fight. And then we also have Ikram Aliskerov versus Young Sung Park. Another great fight, and it's crazy enough that the strawweight title fight is the worst one on the entire main card. But so far, it's a good card nonetheless. And then UFC 322 has been officially announced to be headlined by Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. We already knew this fight was happening on that card. Madison Square Garden, going to be a big event. Co-main event is another super fight. We've talked about this fight many times, and I still believe JDM is the most difficult fight in Islam's career, but it plays out vice versa as well. Islam is going to be the most difficult fight in JDM's career. Now, he hasn't fought a lot of elite fighters. This is going to be his second true elite fight, and we'll see how he can handle the wrestling, because I will say this. If JDM stonewalls those takedowns, Islam is going to get battered out there. It's going to be bad, but that's hypothetical. If he can stop the takedowns, then JDM has good clearance here, but I just don't think it goes that way. I think Islam's wrestling is just going to be too strong. I think his positioning on the ground is going to be something he hasn't really dealt with before. A lot of people want to correlate Bilal's wrestling to the Dagestanis, but he doesn't wrestle like them. There's similar elements there, but he doesn't have that same sort of chain wrestling ability that Islam has. So the initial shot is probably going to get defended, but the chain wrestling is where I think JDM is going to have a problem. Islam can strike, so I think he will land some good shots here. Specifically safe jabs, potentially some left straights if JDM is in the orthodox stance because he switches constantly. The left kicks to the body and then eventually to the head are going to be there for Islam as well. And retreating check right hooks. But I think the bulk of his success is going to be through his wrestling. Now there is a technique from JDM that could throw Islam off completely. His ducking high guard. He'll shell up in the striking while also lowering his levels to meet a potential takedown. And he retreats with that defense as well. We've seen him do this to Belal, and it keeps him safe from intercepting knees that Belal was throwing, and I'm very intrigued to see the effectiveness of that technique alone against someone like Islam. That's a challenge to the fight IQ, and if Islam can solve that task, you got to give it to him, man. It's already been shown to be an effective technique against grapplers. When you go back and watch him use that technique against Belal, it's very hard to see some of the openings for Islam there. It's very interesting. As we know, JDM is a fierce combination striker who doesn't let off in his knockout pursuit. Lethal killer instinct, and will use creative angles to wound his opponent, like he succeeded against Belal, right? That one combination, I believe it was in the 5th round, maneuvering on these sharp angles to land his shots were just extremely high level stuff. The distinction though is that Belal entertained those straight boxing exchanges and Islam will not. Islam switches positions all the time, lowering levels, going to the clinch, all that stuff, and he incorporates a counter-heavy style of striking. He will sometimes begin his strings from long range and then incrementally close the distance into eventually the clinch, just like he did against Dustin. Starts as counter from long range, then falls up closer and ends his combo in the clinch with a knee, or even will disengage away from the clinch with a retreating hook, then resets. This is so much different than how Belal strikes, and he will not be in front of JDM to take the shots like Belal did, right? This is not like criticism of Belal necessarily, it's just to show you how much better Islam actually is. There's a reason why Islam's the best fighter in the world, and no part of his skill set should be underestimated in that JDM camp. They're most likely focusing a lot on his grappling, but they cannot overlook his striking, right? Islam will also angle himself for counters and follow-ups, and that collision should be interesting. Who is going to get the better striking angles, because they both do it pretty well. I believe that will be JDM though. Man, I think both guys have what it takes to beat each other ultimately. It's such a tough fight to pick. I know Islam is a 2-1 favorite going into it. I think it should be closer than that. I truly believe this is going to be the most difficult fight in Islam's career. But if he disproves all of that, it makes this fight simple and easy. He's one of the GOATs. He's one of the GOATs. JDM is a great fighter. Like, to be able to beat him like that after Belal had such a difficult time with him, if he beats JDM easily, I mean, we might be watching in real time the best fighter we've ever seen in the sport. Skillfully, that is. There are still things to achieve for Islam, but skill for skill, he might be the best fighter we've ever seen. And he says afterward that he has set his sights on Ilia Topuria. He wants to fight Ilia next, and that usually brings a bad omen to a fight. We've seen so many fighters lose because they're looking ahead to the next opponent. When you're thinking about your next one, while having an opponent right in front of you, it generally spells defeat. Islam is a professional. He is the best fighter in the world. I don't think he's going to be overlooking JDM once it comes to fight night. But I can't lie, man, him thinking about Ilia Topuria or even answering questions in that manner does bring upon more concern. And same goes for Merab, already looking forward to fighting Jan. But I think he's going to be focused. He's going to be honed in on JDM, and then we'll focus on Ilia after. Bro, I can't wait for that fight, dude. I think that's going to be a war, dude. I think JDM's going to land some big shots on him. The first takedown defense, I think, is going to set into motion a fierce battle between them two. If he could defend that first takedown, it is going to show everybody that JDM is for real at this level and should not be as large of an underdog as he is. Going up against the best fighter in the world, and they're relative in size. JDM is slightly bigger, but I think Islam walks around at 190 pounds, he said. I believe JDM is roughly around there too. So, and they actually have like the same body type. If you see them next to each other, they have like the exact same body type. Their shoulders are similarly broad, arm size seem to be similar, legs, everything. It looks like they both carry the same physique. So after the first takedown defense, JDM starts pressing forward and landing some shots. Then Islam, I believe, will start surprising people with his counter-striking. Lands a stiff left straight that gets JDM's attention. That he can't just walk him down, then he can't just assertively control the fight. Islam starts pot-shotting and landing some good kicks, shoots another takedown, gets defended, then chains that into a successful takedown afterward, where then JDM begins a scramble with him. Now, there can be some correlation with JDM out-scrambling Burns and Bilal, but they don't grapple like Islam, specifically fighting for control. I think Islam's the best at that, but JDM's a really good scrambler. Like, he can definitely get his way to his feet. Even with a broken arm against Burns, it was very impressive the way he was able to roll away from the fence and get out of Burns' control. Burns a great grappler, although probably not in his prime at the time, but even still, with a broken arm, that's impressive. And then he finished him after. So I don't know, man. It's a very difficult fight. I share Khabib's sentiment on this. I think this is a concerning fight for Islam, honestly. And I think a victory for him against someone like JDM would eclipse everything else that he's done in his career so far. Going up a division and defeating the reigning champion, I think would be Islam's solely best win of his entire career. Even though he beat Volkanovski and he beat Charles Oliveira, he beat these guys with larger legacies. But the matchup is entirely different with JDM. He's bigger than all of those guys. The guy could never make lightweight, let alone featherweight like Volk. He's in his prime with all the momentum on his side. And stylistically is difficult. With the takedown defense that he showed against Bilal Muhammad. With some of the best striking in the UFC. He's one of the best boxers in the UFC currently. Like, that would be Islam's best win of his career in terms of the matchup. The fact that it's in November, less than 3 months away, has me geeking, dude. I'm not gonna lie. This is the upcoming most anticipated fight for me. And honestly, the co-main event is great to go with it. Like, it's the one women's MMA fight that I am truly excited for. Shevchenko versus Weili is a fight that has been brewing for years. And this is going to determine who is the best women fighter in the world currently. Until Nunes re-enters the octagon and just swiftly takes that status away from Weili or Shevchenko. I'm starting to lean towards Weili for this fight. I think her improvements over the years, compared to Shevchenko's stagnancy, will be the difference maker in the results of that fight. We'll see though. Has Shevchenko just been ahead of the curve, that Weili's not able to reach her even with those improvements? Perhaps. This, as well as the Amanda Nunes-Akila Harrison fight, feels like the closing of the book that is women's MMA. Honestly, even though there are other fights to be had, like there's Natalia Silva and Norma Dumont, and even the winners of those title fights, there are a few fights to be excited about, but I think as a whole, Shevchenko versus Weili and Nunes versus Harrison is almost like endgame content for women's MMA, you know? It's hard to imagine there'll be any other women's MMA star after this. I mean, potentially Dakota Tacheva in the UFC could bring some hype and attention to women's MMA again, but I think that'll only be for like a few fights. But honestly, if Shevchenko wins and then retires soon after, that would also hurt the flyweight division because it never got the cycle to the next generation. It did momentarily with Alexa Grasso, but then she lost to Shevchenko. So it has returned to the Shevchenko era, and if nobody's able to beat her, that is unhealthy for the flyweight division, as it would be for any weight class. And the crazy fact is that every weight class has suffered from that same dynamic. Nunes retired with the belt, Weili vacated hers. And if Shevchenko retires with her belt as well, that would mean every champion pretty much defeated all the opposition to retirement, which is horrible for the sport's future. The fact that it happened in every weight class makes it even more difficult to regain that same interest that women's MMA once had. Now, there are a few contenders that they still have to fight, like Shevchenko should be fighting Natalia Silva after, if she beats Zhang Weili, which I think she will. I think she will fight Silva. And the only one left at bantamweight is Norma Dumont, other than Nunes. Strawweight's done. Strawweight's finished. Just look at the rankings. There's nobody there that garners any interest anymore. Oh, and also Leon Edwards is back. Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates is such an interesting fight. I never would have thought Leon would have taken that fight. I thought he would fight Ian Gary or something like that. But the fact that these two are fighting each other probably is a testament to show why frequency is so important. Fighting often is going to gain favors from the UFC. Prates just fought, and he's fighting on UFC 322 in November. Fighters are starting to become more active, from contenders to champions. This guy fought 4 times last year, with all 4 wins being the performance of the night, all knockouts within the first 2 rounds. Then he got another performance bonus against Jeff Neal, and I think this fight's going to be close. I don't agree that Leon's just going to get dusted out there. I think Leon is being greatly underestimated. He should be able to perform with his kickboxing skills to not get knocked out in that manner. He's usually a safe striker, so I don't see Prates highlight reel KOing him. Leon's going to be countering. He's going to be moving on the back foot, constantly chipping away at Prates. If he ever extends too much with his power shots, he's going to be clinching to neutralize aggression. He's going to be trying to take the fight to the ground, and honestly might mimic Ian Gary's game plan. Neutralize the aggression, counter-strike with constant motion the entire fight. I do favor Prates, but I believe Leon is just being so underestimated at this point. Sean Brady was such an unfavorable matchup. Prates caters more to his style, so I do think this is going to be a closer fight. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Leon won, but I slightly lean to Prates here. So a lot of interesting fights that the UFC made. All of them we pretty much knew were going to happen. But Islam is saying now that he wants to fight Ilia Topuria. After JDM, that is his next target. And it would have to mean, or at least I hope it means, that he's going to be an active champion at welterweight, because there's so many contenders at welterweight. It's such a stacked division. It'd be so detrimental to the UFC if that division gets logjammed with Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, Kamaru Usman, Michael Morales, potentially the rebound of Joaquin Buckley, Leon Edwards. There's just so many contenders for Islam if he wins the belt. Again, it's a difficult fight. JDM, I think, is the toughest fight in Islam's career. If he could get past him, there's just so many contenders for a champion not to be active enough. If he moves to a different weight class, the sport would need him to return to that division that same year after. The conveyor belt that is the welterweight division is moving rapidly, so he needs to be there to pick off those items. And that'd be great. An active Islam Makhachev, we get these champions to just continuously fight non-stop, try to get at least 3 fights a year. Dude, as soon as there's an incentive, or at least a desire for every champion of the UFC to want to fight frequently, that will be the best year of the UFC. Maybe not pay-per-view numbers. I mean, Paramount's going to eliminate that, so and that does feel so strange now. There's not going to be pay-per-view numbers, or, well, Dana says it's going to be like a few a year or something, but generally, right? It's all going to be viewer-based. And I hope they provide those numbers, because they've been not disclosing the pay-per-view numbers for a while, and hopefully they do give the viewership numbers now. It's just really cool to know. Honestly, I think this move to viewership, that solely might cause Conor to return, because I think his ego would not allow him to sit out so somebody else can have that top spot. I think he would want the highest viewership card in the UFC, and that's most likely going to be the White House event. I mean, the event itself, regardless of who is headlining it, is going to draw in ridiculous numbers. Like, absolutely insane numbers. And if they slap Conor at the top of that, I mean, we're talking about, like, what event has, like, high viewership? What's the Super Bowl get? Okay, it's probably not reaching Super Bowl numbers. The Super Bowl reached to 127.7 million viewers. Okay, it's definitely not reaching that. The World Series reached 15.81 million viewers. I think it could reach that, if not surpass it. I would guess the White House event would get like 20 to 30 million viewers, which is such an insane success if they reach that. But what do you guys think? Do you think the White House event could reach like 20 million at least? Because now we're comparing it to like actually other sports, to football and baseball and basketball, rather than just boxing and, yeah, just boxing. Does basketball have like a big event like that, like a Super Bowl or a World Series? Is it the NBA Finals? That average at 10.27 million. The White House event is blowing that out of the water, 100%. Wow, dude, the NBA numbers are that much lower? Unless this is not the premier tournament. I mean, technically that would probably be in the Olympics. Yeah, the biggest basketball event is subjective, but typically is considered the men's Olympic basketball tournament. But those numbers are going to be inflated just because of the Olympics itself. It has all these different sports that I think get higher viewership. Which Olympic event gets the most views? Gymnastics and swimming are the most watched Olympic sports globally. And some also input track and field. So football, basketball, and sports like skateboarding have large audiences. Skateboarding, really? I didn't know skateboarding's in the Olympics. They have large audiences, but are particularly specific with regions. So I'm guessing like people who watch basketball are from North America and Europe for the most part. Whereas something like swimming would be global. Like everybody around the world would watch swimming or track and field, gymnastics, etc. But all I know is that White House event is going to destroy the NBA finals, 100%. 10 million views, easy for the UFC. I mean, I think some title fights, not even just the White House event, can get 10 million views. Like Khamzat Chimaev, I think could get 10 million views. Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. And you guys see Khamzat Chimaev has shown desire to fight Islam Makhachev. And that would be an amazing fight. But Islam turned it down. And he said it's because he doesn't want to cause turmoil between the regions of Dagestan and Chechnya. I think if they fought each other, it wouldn't cause turmoil. They've had wars and they've had conflicts, but they don't need to trash talk each other. They don't need to say anything crazy. They could keep the entire process respectful. And honestly, I think would have the opposite effect, especially with a complimentary celebration in the aftermath. If they join together, support each other's performance, and speak highly of each other, I think would have a great effect between the two regions. That's what I think. I think it will uplift whatever relationship there is there instead of causing conflict or turmoil. Fights don't have to be out of disrespect, even though it seems antithetical on the surface. Fights can be a form of respect between two regions or two countries or whatever. As Khamzat wants to fight Islam, like he said he's willing to fight Islam and determine who is the best fighter in the world because he knows it's just a sport. He knows it's not going to cause another war between the regions or anything. I respect it, but I think Islam's making a bigger deal than it is. Dagestanis and Chechens fight each other in MMA all the time though on the regional circuit. Having the best Chechen versus the best Dagestani in a full-on respectful battle would only uplift, I think. Islam doesn't want to do it. It's understandable, but Ankalaev would. I think Khamzat shouldn't be fighting Islam or Ankalaev right now. He has a load of contenders, and we want to see those fights. You know, Reiner de Ridder, Anthony Hernandez, Nasruddin Imavov, Caio Borralho. If he beats all four of those guys, then he could do whatever he wants, especially if he makes the entire middleweight division look like a breeze instead of a storm. And then we could start talking about Magomed Ankalaev, who himself wants to jump up to heavyweight. He says he has 2 fights left after Alex, and then he's seeking the heavyweight move against Tom Aspinall. You know what? With how shallow those two divisions are, I don't mind it. Like middleweight, on the other hand, is just stacked with talent at the moment, so it wouldn't really make sense for Khamzat to move weight classes. But for Ankalaev, he beats Alex in a rematch, he beats Yuri, and then he beats Olberg. Who else is left? We'll see with Murzakanov. Murzakanov might rise to a title shot, and that would be interesting. But if Ankalaev wants to vacate his belt and then move up to heavyweight to fight Tom Aspinall, I'm all in for that. But he has to defeat the top contenders first, right? That should just be a standard for every champion of each weight class. Beat the top contenders, and then moving up should be an option, right? But then again, if they vacate the belt, there's nothing the UFC could do about that. If Ankalaev vacates his light heavyweight title in order to move up to heavyweight, they can't just tell him no. So I don't know if Khamzat wants to vacate his title. I can't imagine he does that. I think he just wants to win each title and be a simultaneous triple champion. I just saw Khabib talk about the biggest threats at welterweight for Islam Makhachev, and this is a very interesting thing because Khabib is usually pretty good at analyzing these fights, understanding the opponents of Islam. So he's already set JDM as the most difficult opponent for Islam Makhachev, a higher caliber than Ilia Topuria based off essentially just superior attributes compared to the lightweight, right? JDM would never be able to drop down to 155 pounds. So JDM is the most difficult according to Khabib. Then he believes it's Shavkat Rakhmonov. In his words, Shavkat is someone who commands respect and brings real risk. He also throws in Belal Muhammad in there too. Okay, listen, I understand with Shavkat for sure. Belal's a very good fighter, but stylistically, it favors Islam. For the same reasons that he doesn't believe Sean Brady's a big threat. I'll get to that. I believe there's a strong correlation there because him and Sean Brady are not so different in their styles. And I believe Brady is progressing at a more rapid pace than Belal is. Belal is essentially in his prime and he's not going to get better from here. Sean Brady's getting better with every fight. I honestly think he put Belal there because he's his friend. One could make the argument that Shavkat's his friend too, but I believe that's more of a realistic take that Shavkat Rakhmonov could be the most difficult opponent after JDM. It makes sense. He has a striking, the grappling, the size, well-rounded, very tough, a precise striker, very good pot shotter, which is going to mesh well with Islam there. He can win a lot of those exchanges. The only thing about Shavkat is he did get taken down and he almost got choked by Ian Gary on short notice. It was one of the biggest chinks in the armor of Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I get it for sure. Then he said Ian Gary he wouldn't consider as a serious threat. He never elaborated as to why, but I generally agree. I don't think Ian Gary would be that difficult for Islam. Ian Gary, because of his reach and his respectable striking skills, he should be able to handle Islam at range decently. On the ground though, I think he loses badly. Then he says Sean Brady's not a big threat. Stylistically, he's too convenient for Islam. Islam would outstrike him, and if they grappled, Islam would control him. I disagree with Khabib right there. And there's a common perspective of Sean Brady that he's just not as good as some of these other guys. Sean Brady's just overrated. He's not as good as we think he is. But the support for Brady has been increasing over time. But he's still at that level where people don't think he's that hard of a matchup for Islam. Yo, I've been riding the Sean Brady bandwagon for a while. When people were doubting him, I was singing his praises. I'm going to say it here again. I think Sean Brady's one of the most difficult fights for Islam Makhachev and for everybody else in this division. He's well-rounded. His striking is rapidly improving. He's already a top-tier grappler and only getting better with it while also having a 5-round gas tank. His fundamentals are sound in the stand-up. He's decently quick for the weight class. He's very heavy and strong. I don't know, man. I think Khabib is underestimating him. This is how I would rank the welterweight division in terms of difficult matchups for Islam Makhachev. I would say number 1 is Jack Della Maddalena. Number 2, I will say Shavkat Rakhmonov, but the fact that he hasn't fought for such a long time, he might be ring rusted, decreasing his capabilities of beating Islam at the moment. But him in his prime, at his peak, I think he is the second most difficult matchup. Realistically, with the time off, him not fighting for so long, I wouldn't put him at number 2, right? So as of right now, I would have JDM number 1, then I would have Sean Brady at number 2. After that, I would say Shavkat, then Ian Gary, then Bilal Muhammad. Like, I do agree with one of the components that Khabib brought up. Brady's style is convenient for Islam, but it's also the other way around. Islam's style is also convenient for Sean Brady. Their styles mesh so well together. The scrambles on the ground are going to be some of the highest level we've ever seen of the sport. They're both capable strikers. Brady's a lot bigger than him. Maybe not taller and longer, but he has like 10 pounds on him and might be also physically stronger than Islam too. And would be one of the that will truly test the grappling of Islam offensively. He will be shooting takedowns on Islam. We don't see that happen often. Ever since the Arman Tsaruykan fight, and somewhat with Thiago Moises, we haven't really seen someone try to test Islam with an aggressive grappling approach. That is what Sean Brady is going to do while also mixing in his striking. MMA at its highest level. And I wish more people got behind him, man. Sean Brady's awesome. He does cry sometimes about his size and people making fun of his height and stuff, but it's part of the charm, you know? It's part of being a Sean Brady fan to hear him just complain. It builds the fire under him and he just gets better. It's like a transformation whenever he's upset. But let's go to the questions now. And we're going to start with Nano Peach. Hey Weasel, love that you're doing more podcasts. What is Fluffy's ceiling? His ceiling is champion. Although, how likely is it? I don't know, but that is definitely his ceiling. A champion with a few title defenses. I don't imagine him being a long-reigning champion if he happens to get the belt in the first place, right? And that is a big if, because I just don't see him beating Khamzat. He has the best chance, in my opinion, out of any other contender, but we'll see. Should custom shorts be a thing for everyone in the top 15? Yeah, why not? I think everybody should have their own individualism and essentially like their own brand. If they're wearing a certain shorts, that's like an identity to them. Fighters all used to have their custom shorts, so I think it'd be great for the top 15. Maybe they're gradually getting there because there are some fighters who are never champions. They have their own custom shorts. Paddy Pimblett has his vintage orange shorts, even though they're a lot simpler to make. I wonder what Magomed Ankalaev's are going to be. Magomed Ankalaev, Jack Della Maddalena, some of these newer champions, I wonder what their custom shorts are going to be like. I can't imagine what Ankalaev's would be because Islam already has like the Dagestani theme. They shouldn't just copy it for Ankalaev. He should have his own personality, but I don't know what that would be. He just seems like a chill guy who owns a coffee shop. He's just a coffee mug on the side or something. I don't know. And as for a JDM, like an Australian theme, I would think. Yeah, it should be interesting. I really wonder what they're going to make for them. RDR versus DDP. I'll go with DDP, but if his wrestling is really that weak, then I can see RDR beating him. I'll go like 60-40 for DDP. And then how does Volk versus Pico play out? Same thing with Murphy? I think Volk destroys Pico. He's way too reckless. Now, if he lands a single shot on Volk, he could drop him or even knock him out, but defenses are open. Against the jab and low kicks of Volk is just a tough fight for Pico to ever land anything meaningfully. And then for Murphy, I think Volk versus Murphy would be a good fight. It'd be more of a point fighting contest. I think Volk is just jabbing and leg kicking. Murphy's going to try to win from long range, and perhaps the wrestling of Volk would be the difference maker, but Murphy's well-rounded. I think it's a good fight. I'm like 90% sure it would go to a decision though. So I would say Volk versus Pico is like 70-30 for Volk. And then Volk versus Murphy is like 60-40 for Volk. And then knowing that you love history, have you traveled outside the United States? A long time ago. I've heard Switzerland's pretty nice, and Italy. I've always wanted to go to Australia though. I've heard that if you wandered off too far from the cities that you could find yourself in a battle with like a 10-foot spider. Definitely don't want that. But I always hear people say that you either want to go to Sydney or Melbourne. Sydney's better for first-time tourists or for vacation, and then Melbourne is better if you're revisiting the country or something. They say it has like better dining and the culture, I guess, is richer there or something. But you guys can let me know like which city in some of these countries are better to vacation for. And then honestly, you might be the best analyst in the game. Thank you so much, man. I don't know about that, but I do appreciate it. I just try my best. And then thanks for the content as always. Much love from the North Pole. Absolutely, man. And by North Pole, you mean Canada, right? Shout out to Canada, man. And then go to Sushan Teacup. What will be your realistic main card for the White House UFC event? Realistic. I'm not gonna lie, man. I know some of you guys would disagree, but I think Conor on that card is realistic. It's probably not the most likely main event, but I think if you're ever gonna have Conor fight again in the UFC, it's going to be on that card. Dana's already expressed interest in it. Nate Diaz just called him out for the trilogy. Conor says he wants to fight on that card, and just the ego of him would not want anybody else to have that main event over him. That's going to be the biggest card in UFC history, and Conor would want to hold that top spot forever. If he's the main event, nobody's ever topping that. That's probably going to be the most viewed fight in UFC history, and it will never be surpassed. So I'll say for the main event, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. They could bring in Nate Diaz for that fight. We'll just have Conor as the main event. Regardless, it's going to be a good one. Co-main event, Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. That's a big fight. You need an American champion there. Honestly, let's bring in Merab. He's technically an American champion, right? He's been a citizen for like a year, I think, and it would be cool to have him on the card, regardless. So Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar 2, the rematch. Then we have to have Sean Brady, who I believe is the best born and raised American fighter in the UFC currently. And they can have him versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Would be insane. Amazing fight. And then the last fight on the main card, Max Holloway versus Paddy Pimblett or something like that, or Arman Tsaruykan. That would be a banger of a main card, dude. But with whatever fights they put on there, hopefully they stack it. Dana's talking with them and it looks like it's going to happen, so should be fun. And then your second question, where will you rank Alexander Usyk among the greatest heavyweights of all time? A role model and just supremely skilled. On top of that, a great human being as well. In my opinion, right now, I'd put him in the top 5. So Ali's number 1. I would have Joe Louis at number 2, Lennox Lewis at number 3, then perhaps George Foreman or Evander Holyfield or something. Then I would have Usyk. He's in a debate right there. There's an argument for him to be top 5. He is one of the most skilled heavyweights I've ever seen. If we're talking about skills alone, not just accomplishments, like he is, I think, top 3 heavyweights ever. You have Ali, Lennox Lewis, and Usyk. I think those are the 3 best skilled heavyweights ever. And it's really cool to see Lennox Lewis talk about how he would fight Usyk, because that's the best hypothetical heavyweight fight ever, right? Because a lot of people do consider Lennox as the most skilled heavyweight. Some people are saying it's Usyk now. People say it's Ali. Those 3 seem to be on top of the game when it comes to skills, but it'd be awesome just hypothetically thinking about how they would compete with each other. And then your third question, which fighter, according to you, will make up a great UFC commentator who not only breaks play-by-play properly, but also has a fun vibe to him? I think Alexander Hernandez. Alexander Hernandez is quick-witted. He's a smart guy, good talker, and perhaps in that environment, it could bring out like the more entertaining part of him out there. Because if you remember when he was talking trash to Donald Cerrone, it was a fun lead up to the fight. The guy is entertaining. So I think he can actually be a great commentator when he retires. And hopefully they consider him. And they keep up the good work, brother. Thank you, man. And thank you so much for the questions. And then we're going to Troy Hartung. Hey, Weasel, 2 questions. Number 1, after Khamzat defends the belt a few times at 185, do you think he'll be just as good, if not better, at 205 and have multiple title defenses there too? I think 205 would be even easier for him, considering most 205ers are probably worse with the wrestling defense than the 185ers are. Honestly, I could see Khamzat even going to heavyweight when he's older and obliterating the competition there too. Maybe Aspinall versus Khamzat in 2030. Yeah, okay, so I can see him beating the 205ers. Ankalaev is tough. That's a tough fight because he can wrestle, he's bigger, he's a better striker. Ankalaev is a challenge for sure, but I can see him beating Alex. I can see him beating Yuri, Hill, Olberg. Murzakanov is going to be an interesting fight. I think Reyes would be a tough fight because he has good takedown defense, he's athletic, he has good footwork. So depending on the matchups, I can foresee Khamzat getting a few title defenses in the light heavyweight division. Now, heavyweight, he would have to bulk up. Like, he would have to be walking around, preferably in the 230s. If he wants to fight a heavyweight. He would not be Aspinall. He could beat Tsaruykan, but Pavlovich would be tough. Just too big, too strong. Again, it's just going to depend how Khamzat performs at 230 pounds. We'll see. Curtis Blaydes would be a tough fight because he can wrestle. He's much bigger. I don't think heavyweight is a necessary move, but I guess if Tsaruykan is champion, then Khamzat does have a path to be a quadruple champion or something. And then your second question. How do you think fighters at headline main events should be paid going forward in 2026? Should they still get a percentage share of some form on top of their guaranteed money, like how they currently get with pay-per-view percentage shares? Maybe they can get a share of the gate money that the UFC makes from selling tickets. That seems to be a reasonable compromise considering that the UFC is going to get over $1 billion each year from the Paramount deal. Yeah, it's going to be like an incremental increase each year. So in the beginning, they're not going to get paid as much, but every year they're going to get paid more until they eventually reach that 7.7 billion sum. I don't know what they're going to do, man. I mean, that's a lot of money. Like, there's going to be more negotiations to be had for these fighters, and whoever their managers are, they're going to have to be at their tip-top game at the table with the UFC because it's a whole new dynamic for the champions, for the stars, for any of the fighters that were getting pay-per-view shares before. Now they're going to have to negotiate for higher flat pay. They're going to have to calculate what they're worth and how many viewers they bring in for the cards because that's going to be a substitute now for those pay-per-view cards that they had before. It's all going to be about viewership besides like the few pay-per-views that they're still going to do. I think the managers are going to be fine. Well, hopefully. Optimistically, they're going to be fine. I do have a feeling though some fighters are going to get screwed over because they just don't know how to negotiate with this new world that excludes pay-per-view points. There's going to be a fighter manager team that's going to figure it out, and I think those tactics are going to be widespread afterward. That's the way I think the UFC is going to do it, but who knows? They could introduce ticket sales into their salary or something. Gate money would be big, but I think it might just be a flat pay. They're going to have to elevate with their negotiations. Should be very interesting. And great questions, man. And then we're going to Sleepy Squirtle. Top 5 fighters who need to retire ASAP. Luke Rockhold has to retire from any striking sport. Michel Pereira, 3-fight loss streak, got smoked by short notice Kyle Dawkins. Probably Edson Barboza, 2-fight loss streak. Lost to Laura Murphy, who is one of the better featherweights, but then he went up to lightweight again and got destroyed by Jakar Close. There was that one sequence where Close was bouncing Barboza's head off the fence with his punches. Yeah, Barboza should probably retire soon. And then Tai Tuivasa. I believe he has the current longest losing streak, 5 losses in a row, hasn't fought in over a year, and just really isn't that good. Other than them, I don't know who else should retire. Perhaps Bobby Green and Henry Cejudo. So those will be my top 5. Then we'll go to the worst box. How does Raja Jackson's actions affect how people see MMA fighters? Raja doesn't even have CTE to the extent of someone like Tony Ferguson. So far, it doesn't seem like that is the perception. You know, Raja Jackson doesn't have an extensive MMA career where he's accumulated brain damage to that point, but we'll see. They've tried to villainize MMA before, but I think most people understand that it's something else other than him being an MMA fighter. Oh, and by the way, Psycho Stu is out of the hospital. So he had some severe injuries to the head, had a fracture on his maxilla bone, which is like a large part of the face, and most likely the upper teeth area, if I were to guess, because he did lose a lot of teeth. And they're saying that he has a long road of recovery ahead, but he is in good spirits, and he is grateful of the love and support that everybody's been giving him. And according to Doug, the wrestler who saved him, he said that Psycho Stu is going to try to get some sort of justice out of this, whether it's an arrest or it's him suing Raja Jackson. I think with Yoel Castro, why is Raja Jackson such an idiot and why is he yet to be arrested? If I were to guess, being around Rampage for that long can make you lose brain cells, and he has anger issues for whatever reason that is. I mean, Rampage literally told a story of how him and Raja got into a fight where Raja sucker punched him, and then Rampage put him to sleep with a guillotine, sent him to the hospital, like crazy stuff, dude. I'm pretty sure a relationship where you greet each other with a haymaker is not the most intellectually flourishing. And why has he yet to be arrested? Well, if the wrestling promotion is corroborating with Raja Jackson, that could also be stalling it. But other than that, I can't think of another possible reason. And then we'll go to Arhanst. Number 1, out of all the fighters ever in the UFC under 205, who are the top 3 fighters according to you who could beat Khamzat technically throughout the rounds? Not a fluke knockout. Any fighters under 205. I would say Prime Kamaru Usman, GSP, and Prime Yoel Romero. I think those are the best 3 that could beat him. And then your second question, do you think Peter Yan has the skill set to beat Merab? Or is it going to be the same thing again? Yeah, it's probably going to be the same thing again. Merab is going to give him a part 2 of that domination. And I think Yan will slightly perform better, but I think it's going to cause him to force some strikes out there in the beginning, and that could get him taken down even easier, honestly, because he's just not a fast starter. And I see Merab overwhelming him and keeping him in first gear the entire fight again. And Jan would have to overextend with punches or force some strikes out there, which I think could actually backfire. So no, I don't think Jan has a skill set to beat Merab. And then your third question, how did you score the Khamzat fight? Personally, based on the new scoring rules, I don't think any of the rounds other than round 3 were 10-8s. But most people are saying 50-41. No, I wouldn't say 50-41. I gave the third round a 10-8 and the rest of them 10-9, I believe. Now, the scoring rules state that a 10-8 can be considered if one of the fighters is dominating the action, but it's not a guaranteed 10-8. It looks like they didn't score it as such. So yeah, I would not have scored any other round but round 3 as a 10-8. And then your last question. Looking at the 3 back-to-back Bellator PFL failures, who do you think from outside the UFC have the best chance of being a champ here? No one. None of them. We got some of the best fighters. I guess Dakota Tacheva if we're counting the women's MMA side. But if we're just going on the men's side, there's no fighter outside the UFC that could become champion. Well, actually, technically, Francis Ngannou. And to go to Dre Johnson. Dropped Tom Aspinall in England during the 1700s. How many grown men do you think he could fight at once without being overwhelmed? Basically inspired by the one gorilla versus 100 men question. In the 1700s, how tall were the Englishmen then? Well, I didn't know this. Englishmen in the 1700s were shorter than in many other historical periods because they were usually unhealthy, poor diets, increased social inequality, and the tolls of manual labor, which collectively reduced overall height from a resurgence in the 19th and 20th centuries. This was in large part due to the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. I would guess like other countries had the same effect. It says, according to Steckel's analysis, heights decreased from an average of 68.27 inches in the early Middle Ages to an average of about 65 inches. Dude, they shrunk 3 inches on average within like a few hundred years. And then they just got taller. Very interesting. So Tom Aspinall gets dropped into a English town full of 5'5" guys. I think they would get scared after he decapitates like a few of them. But let's say none of them got scared. Like let's say they all fought him to the death. He'd probably take out like 4 or 5 before they overwhelm him. They go to Yoel Castro, who is the worst fighter currently ranked in each division. Is Tuivasa still ranked? He is. Okay, I'll say Tai Tuivasa. That's crazy he's still ranked. Light heavyweight. You know what? It might be Zhang Mingyang with the way he lost to Johnny Walker. He would suffice as the worst ranked fighter there. Middleweight. Marvin Vettori. Welterweight. Kevin Holland. Lightweight. Honestly, now Michael Chandler or Benoit Saint Denis. But I'll probably go Chandler. Featherweight. Giga Shikadze. Bantamweight. I would say Kyler Phillips. And then flyweight. Bruno Silva. Then what a divine maker. How would prime Yoel Romero in his UFC prime do against the current middleweight rankings, which lightweights on history stand the best chance against Ilia? Prime Romero would defeat Roman Kopylov, Marvin Vettori, Paulo Costa, although he did lose to him before in a very close fight, but I think he would win a rematch. I think he beats Roman Dolidze, he beats Jared Cannonier, Michael Page. If he fights it intelligently, if he solely strikes with MVP, then he loses the fight. If he wrestles, he wins. He beats Brendan Allen. I think he beats current Whitaker, because Whitaker's not in his prime anymore. I mean, he almost beat prime Whitaker, you know? So, yeah, I pick Romero against him. I could see him beating Bohayo, so I'll pick him there. He loses to Hernandez, beats this current Adesanya, beats RDR, beats Strickland, loses to Imavov, loses a very close fight to Dricus, and I think he loses to Khamzat over 5 rounds. Those first 2 rounds would be a nightmare for Khamzat, but I think he would eventually start to gas out Romero. And then which lightweights in history stand a chance against Ilia? Habib, Islam, and that's it. Nobody else beats. Conor could pose an interesting problem, but I don't think he beats Ilia. I think Habib and Islam by far have the best chance of beating him. Look at Ashish Karki. Is Demetrious Johnson the best MMA YouTuber right now? What's your take on this? It's subjective, I guess so. He has the numbers on his side, and a lot of people like it. High production quality. The GOAT of MMA to the GOAT of YouTube. Unless you say GSP is the GOAT. I really like his training videos. I don't watch a lot of his stuff, but the ones that I did, I usually enjoy like him training with Islam and him training Death Sentence and Wing C, who, by the way, actually has potential. Wing C's pretty decent, man. Imagine he eventually fights for the UFC. That would be such a crazy journey. From being trained by Demetrious Johnson, what it looked like as if for a meme, to actually making it to the UFC. That would be awesome. So far, he's winning. He's on a 6-fight undefeated streak, so I wonder how many fights he would need to eventually fight on the Contender Series or something. I mean, if DJ can connect him with the UFC somehow, that would be awesome to see him fight on the Contender Series. But then again, I don't know how DJ's and Dana's relationship is now. They're going to Van Veen or Vart. As we approach the end of Makhachev's career as a UFC fighter, What do you think he needs to accomplish to become the GOAT of MMA? Beat JDM and defend versus Ilia, breaking Anderson Silva's all-time win streak. I guess him just being in the question as the GOAT. To reach any consideration, he would absolutely have to beat JDM first, and then he would absolutely have to beat Ilia after. Or at some point in his career, right? But would that be enough? He would have the longest win streak in UFC history. He'll be a double champ. He already has the most lightweight title defenses. And his competition would consist of Arman Tsaruykan, Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira, Volkanovski twice, Dustin Poirier, JDM, and then Ilia. I guess he could be in the conversation then. So yes, I think that would be enough for him to at least be considered by some and not seem crazy to consider him. So yeah, him beating JDM and then Ilia would be enough. Then go to Saber Numair. Do you think having a thin build or muscular build is better for MMA? I thought about this while watching MVP the other night. It looks like he has very little muscle definition, but he is still very effective. Also, my name is pronounced Saber Numair. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Saber Numair. I'll remember that for next time. So the build is going to depend on various different factors, such as styles, right? I think a thinner build is more complementary for a striker, whereas the muscular build is probably better for the grappler because they are going to be exerting a lot more physical strength at a constant rate. Usually a thin build also means a tall build, right? They're going to be lengthier. They're going to be taller. They're going to have a longer reach because if you're thin for the weight class, that generally means you're going to be tall for the weight class, right? And of course, the reach and the height, all of that is going to definitely help a striker style. And also a grappler, of course, with submissions and stuff like that. So generally, I would say a thin build is better than a muscular build. They're going to generally have better cardio. It's complementary to a striker style, good length for submissions. And as we know, cardio is one of the most important factors in MMA, especially in today's trend, with guys like Merab and Fluffy just withering their opponents away throughout 5 rounds. It's very important, but obviously a medium is always going to be the best. Where they're not too muscular, they're not too thin, they're just a balanced built fighter. That's going to be the best for MMA. So examples would be Islam Makhachev, Della Maddalena, and I'm talking about for the welterweight division, right? Islam for the welterweight division, because at lightweight he was muscular for that weight class. Dude, you see the back muscles on that guy? He literally had the demon back from Baki. Guys like JDM and like Khamzat Chimaev and Magomed Ankalaev and Alexander Pantoja and Tom Aspinall, like all these guys have medium builds for their weight classes. But great questions, and thank you so much for watching the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to give the video a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.